Hey y'all, thanks for joining me. So some of you have probably had an opportunity to review the Seven of Pentacles training and energy reconnection session that I put up about a week ago. And here we are in the middle of the Seven of Pentacles era or time frame of the year that we're traveling through. Time of recording here today, it is the 18th of May, and so we've got not much longer in the Seven of Pentacles time frame here. That goes through Wednesday. Wednesday is going to be the last of the Seven of Pentacles days. And then starting from maybe a little Wednesday-ish, but definitely by Thursday, we'll be rolling into a new archetypal energy that's connected with the next phase of the year. And that's the not Taurus, we're out of Taurus at this point and just into Gemini. So it's Gemini 1, which is the first part of the zodiac month of Gemini. Gemini is an air sign, so it's represented by swords. And the card that the archetypal energies of this Gemini 1 period are associated with are those of a card called the Eight of Swords. So we're rolling from this Seven of Pentacles time into this Eight of Swords energy later on this week. And I'm going to take a minute to just sort of explain a little bit about what that might mean, how that might show up in your life. And just kind of starting with some things that I've noticed going on in my world and my environment and my community and family. Right now, in the Seven of Pentacles time, it's this time of refinement of what you are doing with your earth elements in life. So if something needs to change about your home or your money or your body, that is the sort of stuff that you're going to be looking at and assessing during this Taurus 3 period and saying, okay, I can see how we are, growing towards a harvest here where we're starting to maybe see that we're going to be bearing some fruit in this earth experience that we've been cultivating and gardening in our lives, whatever that is for us, whatever our earth experience is right now, that is what we are cultivating for ourselves. So for me right now, in this Seven of Pentacles era, I can see that I'm doing pretty well physically, financially, in a lot of different ways. I'm definitely growing something physically, materially, in much, much bigger ways than I was able to do in the previous year of my life. So that all feels on track and like I'm growing something. But the thing that really started popping up for me this month as feeling a little bit off energetically for my earth elements is the fact that I'm in this upstairs apartment, right? And I have this beautiful view of the highest mountain peak in the state of Arizona out of my office room window. I mean, it's this sort of peak, elevated experience in a lot of ways for the situation that I'm actually in, which is an apartment era of my life. Mostly in my life, I've been in houses with a garden and, usually in quite nice neighborhoods. And here I am in an apartment. I've got a peak view, but it's still an apartment and it's like way up in the sky. And there are some things that this sort of sky high view of my life through my windows, that perspective has actually been really good for me this year, because there are a lot of experiences in my life that I've found I've had to just sort of lift myself out of in order to sort of paint a bigger picture, in order for me to make good decisions. Kind of pulling out of situations was really energetically, in a lot of ways, what was called for in my life this year. And so it has served its purpose. I am very grateful for it. I am very happy to stay in this little place that is already pretty good for as long as I need to. And I can stay here in gratitude and enjoy and inspire. And, the 7 state feels really good here. Getting to a point of, bigger maturity in my material earth world. So that all feels really good. At the same time, I'm starting to see what the 10-ness of this Pentacles experience might look like. I'm starting to get glimpses of the harvest ahead. I can see buds or flowers starting to form. I can see how my efforts are going to bear fruit in one way or another, for good or for bad. So the 10 is sort of right round the corner when you get to the 7. And so in a lot of the 7 cards, right, we see this figure sort of contemplating these 7 pentacles that he's worked really hard and amassed in front of him in some way visually on the card. And that's usually the image that we see depicted if there's going to be a figure in relation to the 7 pentacles. That's usually how we see that depicted. So we know this is a time as a 7 for refinement, and like its partner yin suit, the cups, where you see the figure of someone usually gazing at 7 cups that are full of various things that people sort of desire in life, are usually in these cups, sort of representatively. Is that a word? So in that way, you can see people sort of needing to be emotionally inspired to really motivate into the next stage that they're developing in their lives. The 7 of Cups shows you that, the emotional inspiration. What we see in the 7 of Pentacles, the other 7 of the yin suits, is this idea of needing to be materially inspired in order to move into the next portion of your life. And that experience has more to do with easing, healing, balancing, opening the lower chakras of the human energy form, rather than in the cups. The cups usually deal with sort of chakras 3, 4, and 5. Sometimes it can be a powerful enough experience to just be sort of all of the upper chakras. So, the cups sort of encapsulate that, and the pentacles encapsulate something quite similar. So that both of those yin 7s become experiences, archetypal human experiences of inspiring towards some sort of a yin goal, whether that be joy or abundance, and enjoying that and feeling grateful for that. So all of that is sort of in there with both of those 7s. We've got a lot of that going on for a lot of us right now. And the decisions that you are finding yourself challenged with in these times very, very often have to do with this idea. How can I inspire more of this into my life? Inspiration, right? Bringing the breath in, or bringing life in to anything. When you're talking about a 7, you're talking about that bringing life in, bringing energy in. What is the final little spark that you need in order to fully realize your best manifestation of whatever vision you had way back when you had the vision that has kind of led you now to this place, this 7-ness. Now, what we're going to be moving into in the following period of this week, from Wednesday onwards, is this new Gemini 1 Eight of Swords experience. Very, 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 very different energy in some ways. And in some ways, these energies relate. And if you can figure out like the most conscious, most helpful transition energetically for your own mind and body, you can also then sort of move into this Eight of Swords time period and be successful there too. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what's going on the Eight of Swords stuff coming up this week. And then we're going to relate it back to what we were just talking about with the Seven of Pentacles. And we'll learn something about this transition from the Seven of Pentacles time, cultivating inspiration in the yin suits, into this Eight of Swords dynamic. So instead of the 7, we now have an 8. The 7 is an odd number. It's about fine-tuning, refining, right? But when we get from 7ness to 8ness, it becomes, right, now I have made that refining decision in my material, physical, and emotional world. And now this next task is up before me. And all of the 8s of all of the suits are always about sort of leveling up the action on whatever task you have. And just really pulling out all the stops. Giving it your all for, until you're proud of your effort. And you've really done your best work. That's what 8ness is all about. So in the 8 of, before we go into the young suit of the swords, let's have a look at the other 3 8s, just for sort of review and just an emphasis of that 8ness and what it's all about for you, versus the 7, which was about refinement. So when we get to the 8s, we get to this deep dive of the energy of that suit's story. This is when we pull out all of the stops in whatever story we're moving through. So with the 8 of Cups, it's an emotional story, and the deep dive on the emotional world is withdrawal, solitude, almost hermitage, right? Seclusion, finding the inner voice, withdrawing from the outer world. That's an 8 of Cups experience. 8 of Wands, well, no, let's do 8 of Pentacles first. We'll do the 2 yins first, and then we'll do Wands. So the 8 of Pentacles is the other yin sign, right? And with the 8 of Pentacles experience, you are looking at a deep dive into the manifesting of the material, whatever it is materially that you're in the middle of manifesting in your earth element experiences. Whatever that physical thing is that you're manifesting, this is the point, the 8, where you're really down to the hard work of it, and you're working really hard, very physically, long hours, etc. But because of the inspiration that you felt in the 7 of Pentacles, you now are ready to do that hard work. You've made that decision, so now you're ready to commit and start doing the harder work, the more committed work of whatever it is that you're manifesting. That's kind of the 8 of Pentacles. So usually when we see the 8 of Pentacles depicted, we see somebody really hard at work, literally hammering out these pentacles from gold or metal. It's such hard work, it's metallurgy, right? So this is the hardest of the hard work, and he's actually creating the pentacles physically in the card. And you see a lot of correlation in this card as a creator energy with the major arcana cards of the Magician and Strength, and even the lower card in that major arcana first column, which is archetype 15 on the bottom row, and that's the devil, right? So you've got magician, strength, devil, and that little flow through from higher energies to lower energies has strength in the middle of it, which is the number 8. The number 1 on the top, we see the magician very often raising his hand, very often pointing a finger up, and then sometimes he's also pointing a finger down. And he resembles a bit of a lightning bolt, right? So we have this alchemical, as above, so below, lightning bolt sort of coming in through the channel or the lightning conductor of the magician, who isn't egoic in his creation. He's not there going, look at me, right? He's saying, look what I've channeled from the divine through me into manifestation. And I can do it because I have all the resources, I have all the tools I need. And they're usually in front of him on a table or a rug, and it's usually a symbol of each of the elements for that particular tarot deck's 4 suits. You'll see that represented in front of the magician somehow, visually, in a lot of decks. So he's got all the resources, all the tools. He can use elements and energies from all 4 and the 5th etheric element to manifest anything he chooses to create. And so that magician energy coming into that 8 row in the major arcana is something we also see here in the 8 of Pentacles. The 8 of Pentacles is about creating, it's about manifesting, but usually it's head bowed, get to work, get the actual doing of the thing done. So that's the manifest expression through the element of Pentacles. Now, when we get to the 8 of Fire, or the 8 of Wands, or the 8 of Batons, we see that 8ness again, represented again as sort of the most fulfilling, biggest expression of that suit's energies and efforts of all of the numbered cards. This is getting really down to business and doing the hard work of creating. And creating happens with that fire, that passion energy coming in. So when we get to the 8 of Wands, we very often see a picture with no image, no person, in the image. All we see in the image are the 8 wands, and very often they're flying through the air, either upwards or downwards, depending on, the particular deck and the interpretation. But it's just 8 flying batons or wands flying through the air. So it's got a lot of this energy of just putting everything you've got out there, just shooting all the arrows off and seeing where it gets you. It's that creative, okay, let's give it everything, and then it'll be done, and we'll see what happened. We did our best. And that's how that energy is expressed through the suit of wands. Now, when we get to the swords, which is, again, the one that we have up now in this next sort of period of time for us that we're moving through, what we start to see is the most 8-ish, the 8-ish of all 8s. This is getting deep into the heart, not only of communication and doing whatever the most difficult work of that communication is, but also there is a real element at play here of how we are challenged in 8 of Swords times especially to figure out how we are sabotaging ourselves, how our stories of what's going on in our lives impact the outcome because of just what we believe to be true, whether that's actually true or not. So what we see a lot of the time in the 8 of Swords imagery, if you look at the Rider-Waite-Smith variant on the 8 of Swords, you very often see a figure often depicted as female. And she is usually sort of bound and blindfold sometimes, and there's 8 swords surrounding her, and off in the distance somewhere, sometimes there's like a castle, right? There's like a goal, but it's like way off in the distance. Sometimes it's up this big hill, and obviously this poor damsel in distress, that's sort of the image we see here, doesn't look like she's going to be getting to the castle anytime soon at first glance, at first blush. But when we examine the image on a deeper level, we see usually that whatever is binding her is usually actually quite loose. Like if you look at it, really, she could sort of wiggle out of those bindings because they're not that tight. And then we notice the same thing about the blindfold. She could easily lift it off her head and see clearly. You know, she has this agency. She's just not at a point where she's recognizing or she's ready to take on the responsibility of recognizing that she has this agency and acknowledging and stepping into that empowerment and responsibility for herself. She could easily get free of this situation. Again, the 8 swords around her, even if you look at them, you'll sometimes see that they are not all that tight of a restriction. Often there's gaps in this supposed fence of swords, and she could just walk through them and carry on her way up to the castle, and it really wouldn't be a problem. She could do that. She just doesn't know that she can do that yet. So that's sort of the energy that we sort of have the opportunity to examine for each of ourselves in this 8 of Swords period. Instead of assessing where you're at physically and making adjustments and refinements there, what this next little time period is really all about, what Gemini 1 is really all about, is getting this 8 of Swords meetup and connection right in your life. And what that's actually going to manifest as for each of us is, of course, different. But if we know that's what we're shooting for energetically, and we can make that conscious, we can use this energy in the best possible way. So it's good knowledge to have, right? This 8 of Swords period is coming up. Here's what you're going to want to keep in mind in order to really maximize your experience of this time period and do your best soul level work in your life, your most conscious work in your life for this 8 of Swords experience. So what you're looking for in this time period in your own life is, where am I sabotaging myself? Where am I telling myself that something isn't possible when actually it probably could be possible? You know, if I could probably do, it's probably not that impossible. Where am I telling myself that something isn't possible when it could be possible after all? That's one of the first things to examine and recognize for yourself in this period. And you're going to have opportunities come up in this period to recognize when something feels authentic to you. And if you're shutting that possibility for authentic expression down, you may start getting ailments in the shoulders or your neck or even your head. And what this is sort of indicative of, what the soul self is trying to tell you with these physical expressions is, you know, where am I thinking differently than I feel? Where am I acting with my thoughts, but my heart isn't on board? Where is that still happening in my life right now? Where could I be sabotaging myself? Where could I be telling myself a different story than is actually the one that is going to best benefit my whole being, which includes my happiness? Stuff that sort of resonates or vibrates with that question's frequency usually is stuff that interferes with neck and shoulders up to possibly ears. Because it can also impact, like, what am I hearing that isn't the whole story? What am I not hearing? If I truly listen to the input I have coming in right now, what is difficult for me to hear? You know, we hear what we want to hear, right? And we see what we want to see. Well, the same is true, yeah. It's we hear what we want to hear as well, and we tell the stories that we want to tell ourselves. We tell ourselves a lot of the time the easiest possible stories, because they make us feel the most confident. So we have to watch out for that. And what you will find happening is that neck chakra, throat chakra energy, that is what we speak into reality, hopefully is aligned for what our heart wants to express into the world and what our mind and spirits want to express into the world. And all of that expressing, finding its voice and its way into the world and its outreach into the world in the neck, the throat chakra, right? So when the words we speak align with what our heart wants to say and what our mind and spirit want to say, then throat energy clears, neck energy clears, shoulder pain often clears, earaches, headaches often clear, once that expression is authentic for both heart, mind, and spirit. So that's sort of part of the goal for this sword time in Gemini with the air sign energy. So how are we moving through that? How are we healing our throat chakras? What are we speaking? What are the words we are saying to ourselves? Are those the best words we can be saying to ourselves? Are those the kindest words we can be saying to ourselves? Are those the most helpful words we can be saying to ourselves? Yeah, these are all questions for this time period of the Eight of Swords that we're about to be moving into. So I hope that was helpful. Once we are, you can look back on my last blog post if you missed it for a little bit more of an introduction to these forecasts that I'm doing now. This is only the second one, so you've only got one to review if you missed the first one. You'll find it just back in the blog. If you're ready for more, what you can do now is you can also look back on that blog post number 1, and I'll try to put a link to it in this second blog post too for you, and have a look at the enrollment special that I'm running right now, which gives you a full tarot for beginners course for $47. And you'll find that link on the page here somewhere too. You'll also find another link on this page to pop in an email address to stay in touch. And if you do that, if you put your email address onto this page, wherever you find that box, when I publish the energy connection session and archetype reconnection for the Eight of Swords, I'll email you the link as soon as that's up too. If you didn't catch the archetype connection session and reconnection session for the time frame that we're in now through Wednesday, that's something else that you'll find in the first video in the first blog in this series. So if you scroll down on this page, you'll find that that video waiting for you there. Okay. Thanks, guys. Thanks for joining me. I hope this was helpful. Have a great week. Bye.